Hello and welcome to the Environment and Climate Change stream of the 2022 National Landcare Conference. Welcome to all those who are in the room, and we're also live streaming this to our online delegates, so a warm welcome to you as well. For those who are in the room, we just ask that your phones are either on silent or turned off so that they don't disturb the presentations, and there'll be an opportunity for both the online delegates and the ones in the room to ask questions at the end of the presentations. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker for today, speaking on the topic of environmental biosecurity, working together to protect what we love, is Shellen Schofield, the Principal Director of the Environment Biosecurity Office, DAFF.
Hi everyone, it's really good to be here. Look, I'm Shellen Schofield, as introduced. I'm from the Environmental Biosecurity Office at the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, and I'm standing in here today on behalf of Robyn Cleland, who's our Chief Environmental Biosecurity Officer at the department, and she sends her apologies. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation as the traditional custodians of the country upon which we are meeting on today. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting our coastline and ecosystems. We also pay respects to elders past and present and extend that to all First Nations people here present today. So today I'm going to be talking about environmental biosecurity and how we can work together to protect what we love. And this is why we are all here. Like-minded people who are coming together to really look after what we do love and because we do care for our country. So before I dive into my talk, I'd just like to share a few slides. We asked the staff in the Environmental Biosecurity Office to share with us their happy place, a special place where they go and feel connected to the environment. This could be the garden, a local reserve, or a place that you like to go on holidays. And I'd just like to share these with you. And I guess also note it's a good opportunity for you to think through your special place in the environment and what makes it feel special to you and why it's important to you to protect it. So, see if I can get this to work. So this is the Yass Valley in New South Wales, and this is Emma's special place. This is Mullumbara Point Beach in New South Wales, which is Gemma's special place. This is a walk to the balconies at the Grampians, which is Helen's special place. Kyola in New South Wales is Philippe's special place. Quindalup in WA is Maya's special place. Mount Perisher at the summit is Gemma and Robyn's special place. Mount Anne in Tasmania is Karina's special place. And Mount Arawang in the ACT is Philippe's special place. All of these places have a special meaning to someone, and for very different reasons, but we all have one thing in common, and that's we want to protect them. Till a few years ago, biosecurity was not well known, and that all changed during the COVID-19 pandemic, where human health biosecurity became forefront to people's minds. More recently, you may have heard of foot and mouth disease, Xylella, a devastating plant disease that could come to and affect our wine industry and other plants. We've had a recent detection of Varroa mite in New South Wales, which is a parasite affecting honeybees. Today, however, I'm not going to touch on any of these. Instead, I want to talk about our environmental biosecurity and protecting what we love. So what is environmental biosecurity? It is basically the management of risks to our natural environment and to our social amenity of pests, weeds and diseases entering, emerging, establishing or spreading. At the Environmental Biosecurity Office, this is our goal. Our environment is precious. It is facing pressures unlike never before, which we heard earlier this morning. We have climate change, we have changing land use, we have pollution and invasive species. This is a quadruple whammy globally. The latest State of the Environment report has reaffirmed that invasive species are a major cause of biodiversity loss and ecosystem decline and extinctions, with over 200 species threatening our current biodiversity. There are 3 examples here on screen that do not belong in our environment. Feral cats. They arrived here with the first fleet as companion animals. They are estimated to kill 1.4 billion native animals a year and are resulting in 34 mammal extinctions in Australia. The middle here is blackberry. Arrived in the 1980s from Europe, promoted as an edible food and to help with soil erosion. It is a highly invasive species. It outcompetes our native plants. And following fruiting season, you can get up to 13,000 seeds that fruit within 1 square metre. The last photo here is Phytophthora dieback. This is a soil-borne mould that infects in horticultural plants. It weakens plants and can kill them. Through these and many other invasive species, we have unfortunately learnt the hard way. There are also countless more examples that I can demonstrate here today. What you might not know, however, is that there are many more of these on our doorstep that have not yet arrived. An important thing to remember is not also the environmental impacts, but our social amenity and how they can affect us. Here are 3 further examples on screen that we don't have in Australia or are currently under eradication, and we would like to keep it that way. The first is Didymo, also known as rock snot. It's an invasive algae with thick brown mats that affects boating, fishing and recreational water activities. It can be spread through contaminated boats, paddles and equipment. In the middle there is brown marmorated stink bug. While it's a crop pest, it can also invade households in the thousands, and it lives in homes. And the third is red imported fire ant stings. Red imported fire ant is an invasive ant, very aggressive, and it can make outdoor barbecues, kids' playgrounds, and our outside areas a no-go zone. The ants repeatedly sting, causing a fiery pain, anaphylaxis, and even death. Reefer is currently in Australia, but under eradication. We've spent hundreds of millions since it was first detected in 2001. What we do know is that we want to keep these things out, and this is where biosecurity comes in. So, what is our biosecurity system? The biosecurity system has measures in place to help us manage the risks while still allowing the flow of trade and travel across the border. We try and manage this to as low a risk as possible, but it's not possible to manage this to 0. That would mean that we'd have no trade and no travel. To achieve this, we have a system with a multi-layered approach that prevents exotics from getting here, and when they are here, we manage these pests to minimise their impacts. We work internationally, locally, with states and territories, non-government organisations, researchers, and you, the community, to try and cover all of our bases. Offshore, the department works with trading partners to make sure our incoming goods, shipping containers, furniture, cars, and anything is free of hitchhiker pests. We have international standards, we undertake capability building, we undertake risk analysis, collect intelligence, and ensure that goods pretty much are clean before they enter our country. At the border, we screen incoming passengers, vessels, aircraft, goods, mail, and we also have our fantastic detector dogs. Within Australia, we work with states and territories and the community to make sure we're ready to act should something get here. That includes detection, surveillance, response, and management. So you're probably wondering, how do things still get in? The reality is there is a lot that's going on. We have 18,000 vessels that come to Australia every year, 1.8 million sea cargo consignments, 41 million air cargo consignments, 152 million international mail articles, and 21 million passengers that cross over. On screen, you'll see some examples of the environmental pests and weeds that we do intercept at the border. We do see hundreds, such as green iguanas, a range of different seeds that can come in cars and cut flowers. We've also seen tarantulas, which are illegally imported through the post. Most are improper practices by importers or exporters, poor hygiene, and sometimes just bad luck. Sometimes, though, there are deliberate attempts to navigate the system. There is illegal wildlife trade, people looking for exotic and unusual pets to keep at home, and also illegal purchases online of plants and animals that we don't want here in Australia. What we do hope is that none of these establish populations here in Australia. This is another example of a risk detected at the border by our great detector dogs. This is an Asian black spine toad hidden in the shoe of an unsuspecting passenger who arrived from Indonesia in 2017. These could be the next cane toad, and we certainly don't want that to happen. So it's a good idea that you check your luggage, shoes, camping gear, clothing, and anything else for hitchhikers and other pests before you come into the country. This picture depicts our current invasion curve, which is how we deal with invasive species and where we do try and target our efforts. Left to right is time, bottom to top is area occupied, and the key along the bottom is our economic return for the different stages of the invasion curve. You can see the little circle at the bottom there is the entry of invasive species of when that would occur. What we do want to do is we have better economic return for trying to prevent, or where we're unable to do so, quick action to eradicate. Otherwise, we get to the point that it's very costly once these species are established here. So where does Landcare fit in? Basically, Landcare is a key part of our asset-based protection. For over 3 decades, over 140,000 Landcare volunteers have worked to remove a range of invasive species from their environment, and there has been some really fantastic outcomes. So while we intercept a large number of risks at the border, sometimes things do get in. And this is where biosecurity is really important, and being aware of our natural surroundings. Things could show up in our backyard, in our neighbourhood, in our local reserve, and even our kitchen. So when you're out and about, you could find our next biosecurity risk, and that is where passive surveillance plays a really important part in our biosecurity system. Here is an example of passive surveillance in action. In 2020, a Canberra resident, through the power of community biosecurity in action, detected an unfamiliar larvae in polystyrene fridge packaging that arrived from a purchase in a shop. He reported this to departmental authorities, where it was later identified as capra beetle, which is a devastating grain pest for our industry. Here was a discovery of a marine pest. This is the Asian shore crab. It was detected in Port Phillip Bay in Victoria and photographed on 2 separate occasions and reported to Victorian authorities. It was not previously known to be in Australia at the time. It is highly invasive, can affect a range of native species, including commercially important scallop, mussels and oysters. Another example here is at community reporting in WA, where there was dieback reported in maple trees. It turned out to be a polyphorus shot-ball borer, which bores into trees and causing death. It has both agricultural and environmental impacts and can sit in over 400 host species and a range of industries. WA is currently leading an eradication program for the shot-hole borer. If there's one thing to remember during all of this, if it looks suspicious, if it doesn't look right and you have concerns, please report it to your local biosecurity authority or the department. Oh, that's the borer. Another really important part of our biosecurity program is general surveillance. And while we can't rely solely on passive surveillance alone, we must be actively looking for things that we don't want here in our environment. And this is where our general surveillance program comes in. We undertake structured and targeted surveillance in a range of areas such as farms, forests, natural reserves, parks, community assets, and we undertake monitoring and reporting. And this doesn't have to be done by the government alone. And it can, however, be resource intensive. So ABARES earlier this year released a set of guidelines for general surveillance programs. And these guidelines provide support to planning, implementation, monitoring, maintenance, and general surveillance programs to help with biosecurity in the community. You can learn more at the QR code on the link or have a look at the booth outside of this room for more information. You can also participate in general surveillance by using a range of mobile phone apps. This includes iNaturalist and the Atlas of Living Australia. So, what are we currently looking for? We've seen the effects of things that are already here and how they've established, but there are many more knocking on our doorstep that we do need to be aware of. In November 2020, we released our national priority list of exotic environmental pest, weeds and diseases. It details 168 pest, weeds and diseases that pose the greatest threat to our environment or our social amenity. Of those, we have a subset of the top 42 across the 8 groupings listed here on our screen. So why do we have this list? Basically, it's to draw our attention to what we need to know about and make sure that these are included in our future biosecurity risk management and planning. While some pests and diseases are easily to see and we can observe what we're dealing with, diseases can be a lot trickier. Here are 2 examples on screen of introduced diseases that are currently in our Australian landscape. On the left is a strain of myrtle rust. This was found in the Tallebudgera Valley in Queensland, and this photo was actually taken this May. It arrived in 2010, spread along the east coast of Australia, and was recently detected in WA. It affects a whole range of dominant Australian species, including our eucalypts, bottle brushes, and tea trees. There are over 200 native species and very limited control options for the rust. On the right is some Phytophthora dieback in WA. It's a microscopic mould, but it has devastating effects. It is spread by both people and often unintentionally. And this can happen through bushwalking, through 4-wheel drives, and through clothing, shoes, equipment, and tyres. It is increasingly difficult in our biosecurity landscape to keep track of all of these issues. That's why we're working together with a whole range of partners, to NRM groups, Landcare organisations and others, because we all have the same common goal. We've run workshops with NRM groups, we've funded NRM groups to undertake a range of weed management programs. ABARES have a 3-yearly land manager survey, and we're currently developing a program looking at Indigenous ranger and other capability building. We also have a range of future opportunities with some gamba grass funding in the Northern Territory, the development of a national established weed priority framework, and the Decade of Biosecurity initiative. Now, I'd like to just leave you with 3 key closing points, and that is we can all do our point, and these are ways that we can do that. Through management, working on country to tackle our current invasive pests and weeds and improving our landscapes. Through surveillance, 140,000 Landcare volunteers as our on-ground biosecurity officers, keeping our eyes peeled, knowing what's different in our local areas and what doesn't look right, and reporting it. And when moving between areas and working on land, practice good biosecurity and bush hygiene and prevent the spread. Now, I'd like to finish up with my special place. This is Talbingo Dam in New South Wales, somewhere I love to go for a whole range of activities and somewhere that I would like to protect. Thank you for your time. Keep up the good work. The department has an exhibition booth just outside the door here, and we'd welcome you to come and join us and ask any questions. We're also running a winner detector dog competition, if you'd like one of these lovely little fellas. So what we're asking you to do is either sign up to the Decade of Biosecurity and show Philippe or Corey at the booth that you've signed up to go into the draw, or post online something about biosecurity or the conference, hashtag biosecurity or National Landcare 2022, and show it to them at the office, at the booth, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shellen, for your presentation. I think we've got enough time for about one question from the audience before we have to move across. I don't think we have any questions from online, so was there any in the room? Grab a test first.
Thank you. I just had a question about promoting the apps and the sort of lag time maybe between the data and that getting to you, because lots of our Landcare's already use those apps, but I just wanted a comment on, the timeframes. You wouldn't obviously use that in sort of an emergency, immediate type situation with something emerging?
No, that's correct. So look, if it's something that it looks unusual, that you're not sure about, definitely report it to your local biosecurity agency or go to biosecurity.gov.au and report it. If you're seeing changes in something or you're not quite sure what something is, or you've something that even is established that wasn't normally established in that particular area, that's where your iNaturalist app and your ALA is really good. We have set up an arrangement to where we do get notifications of things that and obviously you have to go and ID it and check it ourselves in case, we're sure what it is, but it does provide a really good opportunity for us to, commence that process.
Shailen, Andrew Cox from the Invasive Species Council. Great overview of the issue. So what keeps you up at night, given there's so many things to keep you up at night, but what is the thing that really worries you?
Look, I've spent the last few years dealing with things that are already here. So I've had a large focus on a lot of our established pests and weeds, wild dogs, pigs, rabbits. But I guess I'm probably worried about, things that we don't know that are changing globally, and some of our diseases, I think, that don't tend to get as much attention going forward. So there's a few, I guess, on our exotic priority list that I wouldn't like to see come here. Asian black spine toad is certainly one of those for me, for those who are aware of cane toads and the issues there. But yeah, some of our diseases are a big one for me, and particularly probably aquatic in that space. So yeah, there's a lot.
Thank you so much again. I think we'll have to wrap
Great.
it up now, but yeah, feel free to see Shellen later on.